Alright, welcome back to One Piece Anime Review, episode number 430. Yes, now I have not reviewed one of these ones in quite a while for One Piece. A light novel. I think the only ones I've ever reviewed was actually the ones for Ace. Of course, it's also the manga adaptation as well. But here I'm discussing the light novel for Law's Story, which I'm guessing the reason why that One Piece got into this particular train because, giving a backstory, or at least a book focused on one of the characters from the actual show. It's kind of what Naruto does for his light novel series. Now, pretty much, now you're probably thinking, does Bleach have light novels? It does. It's Fear Not Your Own World, which is 3 volumes, and they're really lengthy. For some reason, those are the only ones released here, because I have tried to find English translations, like official, physical copies of the other books. Nope, not released here for some reason. Yeah, I'm not really sure why. It's just, that's kind of how it is. So, Law's Story itself, pretty much picks up, I would say, not long after Korra. That was the guy. If they've ever seen Law's jacket that he wears in the show, there's a guy that he names as that. Basically, someone he loved. Basically, it's Doflamingo's. I think it's supposed to be his younger brother who he ended up killing. Which, of course, we found out years later that the Admiral, who basically for the Navy was attacking, was basically just there in Dressrosa. Apparently, this particular member of this guy who protected Law was actually one of his agents. So he actually let Law go. Actually, it wasn't him. It was actually the Fleet Admiral. Yes, it was the Fleet Admiral himself. The former Fleet Admiral, not the current one, the previous one. Where he revealed to him that he was able to allow him to leave because he was a former subordinate of his. And because he's sort of like a loosed-out descendant of his, so he allowed him to go, no problem. So basically, this is not long after he just died. After the whole green process, he ends up on an island where basically he meets Penguin and Shinichi. That's 2 people who later become members of the Heart Pirates. He meets them on this island. He also runs into Beppo. Yes, Beppo, the talking bear who's a mink, who becomes navigator of the Heart Pirates. And did you mention? I have a brother named Zeppo. What's your name? My name is Beppo, and he lives in a Venture, who is basically named Wolf, and basically kind of in the way we kind of get the building up to the basically how the Heart Pirates came to be. And one thing this book does not really explain in this book is where does Trafalgar Law get his sword from? Yes, Law has a sword that he carries on with him, which this book is not explaining where he got it. It's not in the book. They do explain actually one of his tattoos that he has in the present day. What tattoo is he, might ask? Why, it's a tattoo of the word death on all 10 of his, on basically 5 of his fingers. Because he's a doctor, he was a surgeon of death. Now, the hat thing, they don't exactly explain how it got from, as you see the cover, his hat was like this, and this is how it is in present day. Now, how it got like that, it's assuming it tucked the hat in to make it like that, but the book itself doesn't really explain exactly how it got like that, per se. You could say maybe he did it himself, but it's never gone into about that. He's had the hat since he was a little kid. It's similar to Kate. He's actually 2 characters who actually know what they wearing hats, and actually one of 3 I can think of who wear hats constantly, very rarely take them off, or at least they're not without them. Of course, the other one's being Luffy, obviously. There is Ace. Ace didn't originally have a hat, but later on he did have a hat. Sabo always had a hat. As a matter of fact, he's pretty much worn the same clothes, though he has maybe a version of the clothes he wore when he was a child. So, pretty much, they actually stay at Wolf's house. He calls him basically a junker. Thought a lot of the book. It's not the book. It's almost over when he says goodbye to Wolf that he finally calls him by his actual name. And he further, I'm a genius inventor. And by the end of this, we actually get a chance to see the debut. Well, they don't show a picture in the book, but basically the book ends with the debut of basically two major things happen toward the end of the book. One, we kind of see the Polotango in the book. We actually see how they got the Polotango was given to them. It was built for them by Wolf. The other thing is the name of the group, the Heart Pirates. It was Law himself who picked the name. That is pretty much how they got it. And of course, Beppo is somehow named navigator of the group because, of course, his brother was a pirate. Now, that part is not exactly explained per se. It just basically, it's just, at first, before they became Heart Pirates, they were just Heart's followers. That being Beppo, Sichi, and Penguin. Just these three people. Of course, later on itself, Law would actually have a woman part of his crew. Now, the book ends with them going on their adventure. And the book itself is not exactly very long. Oh, Corzin. So, the book itself is roughly 252 pages. It is really good. Now, there is apparently a sequel coming. Yes, there is a book 2 for this, where it explores the early adventures of the Heart Pirates while they're out at sea, probably before you see them in present day. There's also going to be a book for Zoro. Yes, Zoro's getting a book 2, which that should be interesting. I'm very interested in that book. It's coming out at some point this year, which, looking forward to, like I said. Like, you probably think, like, okay, so we got one for Law. Makes sense. It's interesting they picked him first. Out of all the characters to get their own solo light novel, they picked Law first. I guess because there are some points of his history not really explored. This kind of does explore some of it, but not all of it per se. Think of it as long after Korra's death, and up until when he started going on his adventures as. So they do kind of explain how Beppo got there. Of course, they mention they're going on the Grand Line, which they eventually will do. They do explain how Beppo got to North Sea because Law is from North Sea. Apparently, the reason why Beppo got there is because he actually went the wrong way. That's pretty much the explanation for that. Sichi and Penguin just happen to live on this island that the Law is at. And these three become his followers, and they end up staying at Wolf's house throughout a lot of this book. And then, of course, basically they leave, and of course they say goodbye to the Wolf, which is the last time we'll see him. Now, do I think any other character from One Piece should get something like this? Like, explore, like, their story, like, how they got them what they are. Do I think Frankie should get it? Not. I would say maybe. You could probably get maybe one book out of him. Probably not two. Because the only thing I could probably think of they could explore with him is probably of how he got the cybernetics in him and and probably like the formation of the Frankie family and maybe stuff what he was up to prior to the Straw Hats' arrival at Water 7. For Nico Robin, she doesn't necessarily need one because they have pretty much explored a lot of her history throughout the show, so she does not need one. No, she does not. Zara wouldn't mind it because basically there's a big well of story you can tell with him. Usopp, from what I can tell for him, I don't really think so. I mean, it's mostly about him being a liar, and, well, him just lying about stuff, and just maybe formation was Usopp Pirates, but there's probably nothing for him, for a book, per se. You think, okay, so, Robinson, no. Me. You think, okay, what about Usopp? Nope. Sanji. I don't think so. I don't think there's really anything you can really explore with the character, per se. Not really, because the Whole Cake arc pretty much basically explored his backstory. And we also explore a little of his history during the events of the Bastarissa arc. So, he's out of the question. So Robin, Usopp, and Sanji completely out of the question. You think, okay, and Frankie maybe. I would think Frankie is a maybe. All right. What about Nami per se? Nami, I could definitely see a book for her. Like, you think is there a potential light novel for her to explore like stuff she was up to prior to doing the Straw Hats? I would say yes. There probably is a good chunk of history to cover for her. So I would say so far only 2 of the Straw Hats so far could probably use it, and at least a few probably don't need it. Okay. One might be interesting. I think this would be really cool if they do this. I think Brook, basically, he has humongous potential to explore his backstory. Like, maybe we can see the formation of the Rubber Pirates. Probably what he was, like, you could say, oh, what he was up to during that time skip that he went through before he became a skeleton. Well, they kind of mentioned exactly what he was up to, so out of all the Straw Hats so far, I mean, yeah, we're going from Zoro. So the only ones I could possibly see exploring books for them is Nami, Brook, Frankie. You think, okay, what about Jinbei? I would say yes. He is definitely somebody I would definitely love to see a book for him to explore a lot of his history, because I'm sure there's probably a lot for him that probably has not been explored, so I could definitely see it for him. You're like, okay, what about Chopper? I don't think so, because they pretty much explored a lot of, like, when it comes to his past, they pretty much have thoroughly explored his past, so he is a definite no. Unless, of course, they want to explore what he was up to during a 2-year time skip. Yeah. But in the case of, like, let's see, for past per se, like I said, just Jinbei, Frankie, Nami. You're like, okay, like, is there any member of the crew they haven't really explored yet? I mean, what about Luffy himself? Not really, no. I don't think there's really anything for him to explore, because they pretty much have explored his backstory already. So the only thing you can maybe do with him is maybe who his mom is. That's probably it. That's all you can do with him, per se. But outside the Straw Hats, there probably is a lot of characters you can easily say their backstory is explored. Kuma's has already been explored, yes, thanks to Egghead. And, of course, also the Elbaf stuff. Okay. Big Mom, yeah, they pretty much explore a lot of her history, so there probably could be something for her, maybe the early days of the Big Mom Pirates. Like, the only thing you maybe can explore for Big Mom is maybe the time period between when the Rock Pirates disbanded and prior to seeing her present day. That's the only thing I think of for her. In the case of Kaido, there probably is a good amount to explore for him. Yes, definitely. Eliza's kid, yes. A lot of the other characters in the One Piece universe, you could definitely do more works for them. But if you want to focus on them in Straw Hats, just, well, like I said, one more time, it's just Nami, Frankie, Usopp, Jinbei, and Brook. Those 4 are all I can think of. For characters like Usopp, Robin, and Sanji, the only thing you can maybe explore with them is probably what they're up to during a 2-year time skip. That's the only thing I can think of you could probably explore with them for story potential, is that 2-year time skip. Because, like, all we know what these characters did is that they trained. Like, what the training entailed, not exactly very know with that. But I could potentially see them exploring the 2-year time skip in Light Novel because I highly doubt we're going to explore it. The only thing you can definitely say that is kind of confirmed to be canon that happened during the 2-year time skip is 3D2Y. That particular OVA, which it is canon, despite the fact that people for some reason like to say it's not canon, even though it clearly is, given the fact that it doesn't, let's say, how should I put this? It doesn't ignore stuff that happened post-time skip. I mean, the biggest thing you could say about the OVA is that was the first time you saw, publicly in a way, first time that chronologically we saw that Buggy became a warlord. Yes. Buggy, a lot of the other characters, you can definitely see them explore their history. Not all of them per se, probably not. One book I think that might be interesting to do is that one group of pirates who disbanded. Like, I would love to figure out exactly what happened with them. Like, there's several groups basically. There's many more stuff of the One Piece world they can easily explore. It just depends upon if in fact that would Oda greenlit these stories, he probably would. I mean, he greenlit this, which I give the book roughly a 10 out of 10. It's a great book. But that depends upon them. Excuse me. Oh, here's a little weird one fact. Guess which major manga series that's been adapted for anime and had a series of movies, but never technically had any actual light novels that's been known? Dragon Ball. Really? They haven't had any, but yet Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, My Hero Academia has got a series of side-light novels. A lot of the other popular ones do, but not Dragon Ball? Probably Akira Toriyama never really thought of that. That's probably the reason that never been officially any of them, because by the time we think of having them, the series has been defunct. The series ceased publication years ago. The only thing you'll see more story-wise that is probably manga form, probably the reboot anime. Yep, so yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe to notifications. Next up is the very next episode of Trigun Stargaze. Okay, next video. Bye.